The Galactic Council had seen many species rise and fall across the spiral arm, but never had they witnessed such desperate circumstances. Ambassador Zekthar of the Velkari Federation stood before the emergency assembly, his usually pristine blue carapace dulled with exhaustion. Around him, representatives from 47 civilizations shifted nervously in their environmental suits and floating platforms. "Honored members," Zekthar began, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into the common tongue. "The Devourers have broken through our outer rim defenses. 3 systems have already gone dark. Our combined fleets cannot match their technological superiority." The chamber erupted in concerned chatter. The Devourers were a mechanical race that consumed entire worlds, stripping them of resources before moving to the next system like cosmic locusts. They had appeared from the galactic void only months ago, but their advance seemed unstoppable. Council Prime Yil-Andra, a towering crystalline being whose species had maintained peace for millennia, called for order. "What aid do you seek, Ambassador? Our military resources are already stretched thin across the defensive perimeters." "We need allies," Zekthar replied, his voice carrying the weight of billions of lives. "We've detected primitive signals from an unexplored system in Sector 7G, radio waves, electromagnetic signatures. There might be a developing civilization there. Perhaps they have resources we haven't considered." The room fell silent. Seeking aid from a primitive species was unprecedented. Most civilizations in the galaxy had evolved past the need for crude warfare, preferring diplomatic solutions and advanced defensive technologies. The idea of requesting help from beings who hadn't even achieved faster-than-light travel seemed absurd. "Are you seriously suggesting," interjected Commander Thrak of the Hive Collective, "that we involve a species that probably still uses chemical propulsion and kinetic weapons?" "Desperate times require unconventional solutions," Zekthar countered. "Our scouts report this species, they call themselves humans, has covered their planet with an extensive communication network. They might have developed unique technologies or strategies we haven't considered." 3 days later, a small diplomatic vessel approached the 3rd planet of the Sol system. Captain Liran of the research ship, Harmony's Call, studied the blue-green world through enhanced sensors. The electromagnetic chatter was overwhelming, thousands of signals bouncing between orbital platforms and surface installations. "Remarkable," whispered Science Officer Nelvan, adjusting her instruments. "They've surrounded their world with artificial satellites. The coordination required for such a network suggests advanced computational abilities." "Are they united as a species?" Captain Liran asked. "Unknown. We're detecting multiple distinct signal sources. They appear to be organized into separate territories. But the complexity of their communication suggests they're capable of large-scale cooperation when needed." The ship initiated first contact protocols, broadcasting a mathematical sequence followed by basic pictographs. Within hours, the response came, not just from one source, but from dozens of locations across the planet. The humans had not only understood the message, but had coordinated a global response in record time. The first meeting took place aboard a hastily constructed space station that the humans called Gateway Alpha. Captain Liran was impressed by how quickly they had built it, less than 6 months from first contact to operational facility. The humans had even included environmental accommodations for various alien physiologies, despite never having met extraterrestrial life before. Director Sarah Chen, representing something called the United Earth Defense Council, greeted the alien delegation in the station's central conference room. She was smaller than most species the captain had encountered, but her presence commanded attention. "Welcome to our system," Director Chen said, her words translated through the universal communicator device the aliens had provided. "We understand you've come seeking assistance with a crisis." Captain Liran explained the situation, the mechanical devourers, their unstoppable advance, and the desperate need for any help humanity might offer. He tried to frame it diplomatically, not wanting to seem presumptuous about requesting aid from a species that had only recently discovered they weren't alone in the universe. To his surprise, Director Chen listened without interruption, occasionally asking pointed questions about the Devourer's technology, their tactical patterns, and the resources they targeted. Her queries revealed a mind that thought strategically about conflict in ways that impressed the alien captain. "You mentioned they consume worlds for resources," she said finally. "What's their primary method of harvesting?" "They deploy massive mining platforms that strip planetary surfaces. Their ships are heavily armored but relatively slow-moving during the harvesting phase. Most civilizations have tried to evacuate populations rather than engage directly." Director Chen exchanged glances with her advisors. "Captain, with respect to your people's losses, that sounds like a tactical opportunity rather than an insurmountable problem." The directness of her statement caught the aliens off guard. Most species approached warfare as a last resort, preferring defensive strategies and evacuation procedures. The humans seemed to be suggesting an offensive approach. "I don't understand," Captain Liran admitted. "If they're slow and vulnerable during harvesting, that's when you hit them, hard and fast before they can extract what they came for. Make the cost of each world so high that continuing becomes unprofitable." The concept was so foreign to galactic thinking that it took several minutes for the translation software to properly convey her meaning. The aliens had spent millennia developing advanced shields and evacuation protocols. The idea of actively hunting and destroying an enemy force was almost primitive in their minds. But as Director Chen outlined humanity's initial thoughts on anti-devourer tactics, Captain Liran began to see the logic. Where other species had focused on protecting what they had, the humans were thinking about eliminating the threat entirely. "We'll need detailed intelligence about their capabilities," Director Chen continued, "and we'll need time to prepare our response. How long before they reach the next inhabited system?" "Approximately 4 solar cycles by our calculations," the captain replied. 4 months, Director Chen translated for her team. "Tight timeline, but manageable." She turned back to the alien delegation. "Captain, I want you to understand something important about humanity. When we commit to helping someone, we don't do it halfway. If Earth is going to assist in this conflict, we're going to win it." The confidence in her voice was unsettling to beings who had spent months fleeing from a seemingly unstoppable force. Captain Liran wondered if the humans truly understood what they were volunteering to face, or if their inexperience with galactic-scale warfare had made them dangerously overconfident. As the delegation prepared to return to Galactic Council space with humanity's offer of assistance, Captain Liran couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental was about to change. The humans had agreed to help, but their approach to the problem was unlike anything he had encountered in his centuries of diplomatic service. The last thing he saw as Harmony's Call departed the Sol system was the blue-green planet below, surrounded by its artificial satellites and the growing framework of what the humans called defensive platforms. In the distance, he could see the beginning construction of much larger structures, ships perhaps, though their design was unlike anything in current galactic databases. As they jumped to hyperspace, carrying news of humanity's commitment back to the desperate Galactic Council, Captain Liran wondered if they had just enlisted the aid of saviors, or if they had unknowingly introduced something far more dangerous than the mechanical threat they sought to escape. The humans had promised to help. What they hadn't mentioned was exactly how they planned to do it. 3 weeks after the alien delegation's departure from Earth, Ambassador Zekthar received an unexpected communication at the Galactic Council's emergency headquarters. The transmission came not from the Sol system's edge, but from a location that shouldn't have been possible: deep space, halfway between human territory and the war zone. "Ambassador," came the translated voice of Director Chen, "we're ready for preliminary reconnaissance. We'd like permission to observe the enemy firsthand. Zekthar's confusion was evident even through the alien communication device. Director Chen, our long-range sensors show no human vessels in that region. How are you transmitting from— We've been working on extended range capabilities, Chen interrupted smoothly. We're currently conducting surveillance of the Devourer fleet movements in the Kepler 442 system. We need to update our tactical assessments. The implications hit Zekthar like a physical blow. Kepler 442 was under active assault by the Devourers. It would take the fastest Galactic Council ships nearly 2 weeks to reach that location from human space. Yet somehow the humans were already there. Impossible, whispered Science Advisor Velken, monitoring the conversation. They don't have hyperspace technology. We've confirmed their propulsion systems are still chemical-based. Actually, Director Chen's voice continued, we've made some improvements since your visit. We'd like to propose a joint operation. Can you meet us at coordinates? Let me see. 127.43 mark, 67.89. We'll be waiting. The coordinates placed the rendezvous point near the Zerion Nebula, a location that served as a staging area for Council relief efforts. It would take their fastest courier ship 8 hours to reach that position. If the humans were somehow already there, it would represent a technological leap that defied everything the Council understood about human capabilities. Admiral Korevish of the Council Defense Fleet arrived at the coordinates expecting to find empty space. Instead, his ship's sensors immediately detected multiple energy signatures, unlike anything in the galactic database. What he found waiting for him challenged every assumption he'd made about the primitive species they'd recruited. "Admiral," came Director Chen's voice, "welcome to the Resolve. Please come aboard." Through the view screen, Admiral Korevish studied the human vessel. It was massive, easily twice the size of his own flagship, but its design was utterly alien to galactic architecture. Instead of the smooth, organic curves favored by most species, the human ship was angular and aggressive, covered in what appeared to be weapon emplacements and sensor arrays. "How did you construct something of this magnitude in 3 weeks?" the Admiral asked as he was escorted through the ship's corridors. "We didn't," replied the human officer guiding him, a stern woman who introduced herself as Captain Rodriguez. "The Resolve has been under construction for 6 months. We started building her the day after we detected your people's radio transmissions requesting emergency aid." The Admiral stopped walking. "That's impossible. We sent those distress signals to the Council only 5 weeks ago." Captain Rodriguez smiled grimly. "Admiral, you transmitted those signals on standard galactic frequencies. We've been monitoring those channels for decades. We heard your people's call for help long before you decided to contact us directly." The tour that followed shattered everything Admiral Korevish thought he knew about human technology. The ship's power core generated energy readings that exceeded most space stations. The weapon systems were unlike anything he'd ever seen. Kinetic acceleration devices that could launch projectiles at significant fractions of light speed, energy weapons that focused stellar-level radiation into precise beams. "This is our tactical center," Captain Rodriguez said, leading him into a vast chamber filled with displays showing real-time data from across the galaxy. "We've been tracking the Devourer fleet movements for weeks." "Weeks?" The Admiral stared at the displays. They showed detailed information about enemy positions, fleet compositions, and tactical patterns that the Council's own intelligence services had been struggling to gather. "How do you have access to this information?" "We have assets in position," Director Chen said, joining them in the tactical center. "Small observation platforms, monitoring satellites, reconnaissance drones. We seeded them throughout the contested regions shortly after our first meeting." The Admiral realized what she was saying. While the Council had been debating response strategies and organizing evacuation protocols, the humans had quietly deployed a comprehensive surveillance network across multiple star systems. They had been watching the enemy, learning their patterns, identifying weaknesses. "Director," the Admiral said slowly, "exactly how many ships do you have?" "Currently operational? 47 vessels of various classifications. We have another dozen completing final construction checks, and production facilities are operating around the clock." The number was staggering. The entire Council defense fleet comprised 31 ships, accumulated over centuries of cooperative construction by dozens of species. Humanity had built a larger fleet in a matter of months. "But more importantly," Director Chen continued, "we have a plan." The briefing that followed revealed a level of strategic thinking that impressed and slightly disturbed the Admiral. The humans had identified a critical flaw in the Devourer's approach. Their mining platforms required direct energy links to their motherships during resource extraction. If those links could be severed at precisely the right moment, the platforms would become isolated and vulnerable. "The Devourers rely on overwhelming defensive firepower," explained General Martinez, pointing to tactical projections. "They position their harvesting platforms behind massive shield generators and assume no one will attempt a direct assault. Every species that's faced them has focused on evacuation rather than engagement. Because direct assault against their shielding is suicide," Admiral Korovish protested. "Their defensive capabilities are beyond anything we can penetrate." "Conventional penetration, yes," Director Chen agreed. "But there are other approaches." The humans showed him their plan. Instead of attempting to breach the Devourer's shields through brute force, they intended to use the enemy's own energy requirements against them. At the moment of maximum power drain, when the harvesting platforms were at full extraction capacity, the humans would deploy what they called kinetic penetrators. "Essentially," General Martinez explained, "we're going to shoot through their shields with projectiles moving so fast that their defensive systems won't have time to react. The platforms will be destroyed, the motherships will lose their primary harvest capacity, and the energy feedback should disable their shield systems for several minutes, giving us a window for targeted strikes against their main vessels," Admiral Korovish realized. "Exactly. But timing is everything. We get one shot at this." The Admiral spent the next several hours touring human facilities, each revelation more startling than the last. Their production capacity was unlike anything he'd seen. Entire assembly lines dedicated to manufacturing weapons and ships at industrial scales. Their military personnel moved with efficiency and purpose that suggested extensive combat experience, despite their species' apparent newness to galactic affairs. "Director," he finally asked, "how long has your species been preparing for this kind of warfare?" "Define this kind," she replied. "Large-scale space combat, military operations across multiple star systems, the coordination required for what you're planning." Director Chen was quiet for a moment. "Admiral, human history is largely the history of warfare. We've been fighting each other across continents and oceans for thousands of years. When we learned we weren't alone in the universe, we didn't see it as a reason to abandon those skills. We saw it as a reason to perfect them." The statement crystallized something that had been troubling Admiral Korovish throughout his visit. The Council species had evolved beyond their aggressive phases millions of years ago. They approached conflict as something to be avoided, managed, or endured. The humans approached it as something to be won. "There's something else," Director Chen added. "We know about the other threat." "Other threat?" "The signals we've been intercepting suggest the Devourers aren't acting independently. Something directed them toward this region of the galaxy, something that's been watching the Council for quite some time." The Admiral felt his carapace chill. The Council's intelligence services had suspected as much, but couldn't prove it. The idea that the Devourers might be weapons rather than random aggressors was their worst-case scenario. "Do you know what it is?" he asked. "Not yet. But we're going to find out. That's Phase 2 of our operation." As Admiral Korovish prepared to return to Council space with news of humanity's preparations, he couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was about to witness something unprecedented. The humans weren't just offering to help defend against the Devourer threat. They were preparing to eliminate it entirely and pursue whatever force had unleashed it. Standing on the observation deck of the Resolve, watching human construction ships assembling yet another massive vessel in the distance, the Admiral wondered if the Council had made the right choice in seeking human assistance. The humans were clearly capable of delivering on their promises, but their approach to problem-solving was so fundamentally different from galactic norms that the consequences might be unpredictable. One thing was certain: the Devourers had no idea what was coming for them. Neither, the Admiral suspected, did anyone else in the galaxy. The Verdani system died at 0347 Galactic Standard Time. Admiral Korovish watched from the bridge of his flagship as the last Verdani evacuation transports cleared the system's edge. Below them, on the planet that had once housed 12 billion souls, the Devourers' harvesting platforms tore into the crust like mechanical vultures. The sight never became easier to witness. "Admiral," came the voice of Communications Officer Telnix, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the human fleet. Director Chen is requesting immediate tactical coordination." "Put her through." The main screen flickered to life, showing Director Chen standing in what appeared to be a command center, unlike anything the Admiral had seen during his visit to human space. Behind her, dozens of officers worked at stations displaying real-time information from across the system. The scale and sophistication of their operations was breathtaking. "Admiral," Chen said without preamble, "we're moving to engagement range. All Council vessels should withdraw to safe distance immediately." Safe distance? Admiral Korovish studied his tactical displays. The human fleet had somehow positioned itself at the edge of the system without being detected by either Council sensors or Devourer monitoring stations. "Director, what exactly constitutes safe distance?" "Minimum 50,000 kilometers from any Devourer vessel. This is going to get messy." Before the Admiral could respond, his sensor officer's voice cut across the bridge. "Admiral, new contacts appearing throughout the system. Multiple human vessels decloaking simultaneously." The tactical display transformed in seconds. Where moments before only 7 massive Devourer ships had been visible, the system now revealed the presence of nearly 100 human vessels. They hadn't just avoided detection, they had positioned themselves in perfect attack formations around every enemy ship. "Impossible," breathed Admiral Korovish. "How did they achieve such positioning without triggering proximity alarms?" His answer came from the Devourer fleet itself. The mechanical ships, which had never before shown any concern for stealth opponents, suddenly erupted in chaotic activity. Their harvesting operations ceased immediately as every vessel raised shields and began scanning for threats they couldn't locate or understand. "Director," the Admiral transmitted to Chen, "the enemy appears to be in full defensive mode, but they can't seem to target your vessels effectively." "Stealth coding," Chen replied casually. "We've been testing it against their sensor technology for weeks. Turns out their detection systems are calibrated for energy signatures and metallic compositions common to galactic civilizations. They're not designed to track vessels built from Earth materials and powered by fusion reactions they've never encountered." The Admiral realized the implications. The humans hadn't just built a fleet. They had built an invisible fleet specifically designed to exploit Devourer technological blind spots. "Beginning attack run," Director Chen announced. What happened next redefined everything Admiral Korovish understood about space combat. The human assault began not with energy weapons or missile attacks, but with something far more primitive and terrifying. Across the system, human ships launched what appeared to be simple metal projectiles. The Admiral's tactical officer dismissed them as ineffective. Kinetic weapons against shielded targets were considered obsolete by galactic standards. Then the projectiles began accelerating. "Admiral," his science officer reported, voice climbing with disbelief. "Those projectiles are achieving velocity readings that shouldn't be possible. They're approaching significant fractions of light speed." The first kinetic strike hit the lead Devourer harvesting platform with the force of a small star going supernova. The platform's shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and slower projectiles, simply ceased to exist. The projectile passed through the shielding, the platform itself, and the planet's surface, creating a crater visible from orbit. But the humans weren't finished. "Phase 2 initiating." Director Chen's voice remained calm despite the devastation her forces were unleashing. "All units, target the power coupling connections. Leave the motherships functional. We need them operational for information extraction." The Admiral watched in stunned silence as the human fleet executed the most precise, large-scale military operation he had ever witnessed. Each Devourer vessel found itself under attack by multiple human ships, but instead of attempting to destroy the enemy outright, the humans systematically disabled specific systems with surgical precision. Energy coupling lines that connected the massive motherships to their harvesting platforms were severed by targeted beam weapons. Communication arrays were eliminated by guided projectiles that somehow maneuvered around defensive systems. Shield generators were overloaded by energy bursts that seemed to feed directly into the enemy's own power grid. "How are they achieving such precision?" Admiral Korevish asked his tactical officer. "Unknown, sir. They appear to have detailed knowledge of Devourer internal systems. Their targeting is more accurate than our most advanced scientific equipment." The answer became apparent as the battle progressed. The humans weren't just attacking. They were conducting a live dissection of enemy technology. Every shot was calculated to disable rather than destroy. Every target selected to gather maximum intelligence about Devourer capabilities. "Admiral," Director Chen's transmission resumed, "we're going to need Council support for the next phase. We've successfully isolated the motherships from their operational platforms, but we need transportation assistance for prisoners." "Prisoners?" The Admiral couldn't hide his confusion. "The Devourers are mechanical entities. They don't take prisoners, and they can't be taken prisoner." "Actually," Chen replied, "that's not entirely accurate. Would you like to see our intelligence findings?" The transmission shifted to show the interior of a captured Devourer vessel. Admiral Korevish expected to see mechanical corridors and computer systems. Instead, he found himself looking at what appeared to be a biological command center where strange organic entities worked at control stations. "Meet the real Devourers," Director Chen announced. "The mechanical ships are just tools. These are the actual operators. A species that was enslaved by an unknown force and compelled to destroy galactic civilizations. They've been prisoners in their own ships for centuries." The revelation shattered everything the Council thought they knew about their enemy. The Admiral stared at the organic beings on the screen, noting their obvious distress and the technological restraints that bound them to their stations. "How did you discover this?" he asked. "We've been conducting boarding operations throughout the engagement," Chen explained. "Once we disabled their defensive systems, getting inside was just a matter of applied engineering. The beings you're seeing have been trying to communicate with us. They're asking for help." The scope of human capabilities became clear. While fighting a space battle across an entire star system, they had simultaneously conducted multiple boarding operations, gathering intelligence and making contact with entities that no galactic civilization had even known existed. "Director," Admiral Korevish said slowly, "what exactly is the next phase you mentioned?" "We're going hunting," Chen replied grimly. "The enslaved Devourers have provided us with coordinates for their controller's location. The entity that's been directing these attacks has been hiding in dark space beyond the galactic rim. We're going to pay it a visit." The Admiral's sensors showed the human fleet reforming into new configurations. Additional vessels were appearing, not from stealth systems this time, but from jump points at the system's edge. The humans had been holding reserves that dwarfed the force they'd just used to defeat the Devourers. "How many ships do you actually have?" the Admiral asked. "Enough," Director Chen answered. "Admiral, we appreciate the Council's assistance in identifying this threat, but from here forward, this becomes a human operation. We've identified the source of the problem, and we're going to eliminate it permanently." The entity beyond the rim could have capabilities far beyond what we've encountered, the Admiral warned. "You might be facing something that makes the Devourers look primitive by comparison." "Possibly," Chen acknowledged. "But there's something this entity didn't account for when it decided to threaten galactic civilization. It picked a fight with a species that has spent its entire evolutionary history learning how to kill things that were bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than we are. We're very good at it." The human fleet began moving toward the system's edge, their formation revealing sophisticated coordination between hundreds of vessels. As they prepared to jump beyond known space, Director Chen made one final transmission. "Admiral, please convey our thanks to the Galactic Council for bringing this matter to our attention. We'll send word when the threat has been permanently resolved. Oh, and please let them know that Earth formally accepts membership in the Galactic Council. We'll be attending the next session to discuss our integration into galactic affairs." "Director," the Admiral called, "when will that be?" "Probably next week," Chen replied casually. "This shouldn't take very long." The human fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind a star system full of disabled Devourer vessels, rescued organic beings, and a Galactic Council delegation that was struggling to process what they had just witnessed. Admiral Korevish stood on his bridge, staring at the space where the most powerful military force in galactic history had just disappeared, carrying out an operation to eliminate a threat that had terrorized civilizations across multiple sectors. In the span of hours, humanity had revealed capabilities that exceeded anything the Council could have imagined and had taken responsibility for solving a problem that had seemed insurmountable. The Admiral realized that the galaxy had just changed forever. The humans hadn't just answered the Council's call for aid. They had announced their arrival as the dominant military power in known space, and they had done it with a casual efficiency that suggested this was merely their opening demonstration. As he began composing his report to the Council, Admiral Korevish found himself wondering not about the outcome of humanity's mission beyond the rim, but about what other problems the galaxy might face now that the humans had decided to take an active interest in galactic affairs. The aliens had sought aid, the humans had showed up with shock and awe, and the universe would never be the same.